stream is starting. We're live now.
Oh, all right. Thanks, Bob. Thanks.
Is that what you said?
No, I just said, oh, thanks, Bob. Thanks for that. He said, oh, I'm going to turn this on and then fucking leave.
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know when the comments start coming back. We'll see here. Yeah, Tool Girl. Big hugs.
Yeah.
Big hugs all around. Oh, fuck.
Seriously, Caroline, we don't want you to feel like this is getting lost. All the hard work you did amidst all this and all the hard work that so many people have been doing for, this show and stuff.
Whew.
It really does make me feel better. I mean, it just, it really does make me feel better.
Yeah.
That people care, and that...
Yep, gonna need that. Thank you. JV, you got tissues?
No, let me grab some really quick. Sorry, guys.
All right. People coming in. Oh. All right. So those of you that were on the pregame with us, also, hopefully, it seems like people are finding it, but we're obviously early. If you guys aren't patrons, if you're not on Patreon, generally the pregame is an hour of fun. That's what that's for, is to just kind of have a good time and just have a little fun before we get started with the serious stuff, but just nobody is up for that today. So we started this a little early. We're probably going to keep this pretty short. I hopefully got out some of my emotion in the pregame. Thank you, patrons, for being there for that. There's really not much. I'm going to start this thing here in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and end the pregame now. So your pregamers that are listening to this on Wednesday, sorry for the 18-minute pregame episode, but we love you guys, and I know that you understand. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Yeah, bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
All right. As I'm sitting here thinking about it, I know you probably wrote an introduction.
I have an appropriate introduction.
If you want to do it, I'll let you do it. Janet, let's go ahead and
if you want to do it, you can do it. I feel like I wrote an appropriate.
It's up to you.
I got it.
Okay. You ready, Janet?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Friends, it's a somber day here on Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for Season 15, Episode 13, The Conspiracy. This week we heard about a group of witnesses that coordinated a false story that helped the state build a case against Jody. And Bob posed a question. Why? But truly, our hearts and minds are in a much different place. The state-sanctioned murder of Marcellus Williams that took place moments before we recorded this follow-up. Bob, Janet, and I are going to do our best to get through this follow-up. But Bob, do you want to address anything?
Yeah, so I know that you guys that are hearing that aren't live, that are hearing the audio version of this, you're hearing it on Friday, and the news is a couple days old then. But we are, as Zach said, it's currently 6:27 p.m. Central Time. Marcellus Williams, the report of his execution came out at 6:18. We've covered his case before. For those of you that aren't familiar, for those of you that just joined us for season 15, I believe it was back in 2017 when I originally covered Marcellus Williams' case. We just did an episode when he was scheduled to be executed, and thankfully there was a stay of execution in that situation. That bought some time for some more DNA testing. There is an episode, I think it's the last episode or second to last episode of season 14, before we started this season, where I went into detail into Marcellus Williams' case, because in May or June of this year, he was scheduled to be executed again. Everybody rose up and wrote to the governor, did everything that we could do, signed petitions to try to stop the execution. They stayed the execution again to give some time for some things to work through the court. The short story is this: Marcellus Williams is an innocent man. And this, in the state of Missouri, just murdered him. They murdered him while the prosecutor joined the defense and filed a motion to overturn his conviction because, hear me again, the prosecutor believes that he's innocent. And the Attorney General's office has been fighting that. They've been hell-bent on killing this man. He was convicted of killing a woman named Lisa Gale. And I want to make sure that we don't lose track of her, the victim in this case, and her family, who also joined with the prosecution and the defense to try to stop this execution. There's a ton of evidence, which you can hear in that evidence, that points to his innocence. There was tampering with evidence. It recently came out that the original prosecutor had excluded someone from the jury because they were black. Marcellus Williams, a black man. So all of these issues, the prosecutor and the defense have been throwing everything they had to try to stop this execution being fought by the Attorney General of Missouri the entire time. Their claims went up to the Missouri Supreme Court on Monday, who denied the claims and ordered the execution to go forward. Then it was presented to Governor Mike Parsons' desk last night, which was Monday night, a request for clemency. Parsons also had the power to stay the execution. He denied that. What I read about it was that he said that a jury of his peers convicted him, so right or wrong doesn't matter at this point. There's been three issues on appeal with the United States Supreme Court. An hour before the execution, they gave their ruling denying all three counts, two without dissent. One, there was the three justices that were appointed by Democrat presidents said they would have overturned, or they would have stopped the execution based on that third charge. But it was 9-3, so it didn't matter. We were hoping, we were a little late getting on our stream because we were just hoping for a last minute move by the governor or something that could have put a stop to this. And they didn't. So Marcellus Williams, 55 years old, was killed by lethal injection after all these years of this battle. And there's really not much to say about it. And I thought I got most of my emotions out during our pregame, but I'm still, my blood is boiling. This is nothing short of murder. We talked about before the show some of the statistics that are out there for anybody that is a proponent of the death penalty. In this country, since the beginning of the death penalty, over 200 people have been exonerated after they were executed in the United States. 4 of those people were in the state of Missouri. In my opinion, Marcellus Williams is the 5th innocent person that the state of Missouri has killed. I don't understand the insistence on murdering anyone in this case. There was one offer that the state had made, the prosecution had made, that the defense had agreed to, and Lisa Gale, the victim's family, had agreed to, offering an Alford plea. The plea agreement was they would overturn the conviction. Marcellus Williams would plead guilty and be resentenced to life in prison instead of death. Both the prosecution and the victim's family wanted that to happen. And the Attorney General appealed that as well, and that ruling was overturned. So that's where we stand. I know lots of you have have done everything you can do. We have. Even my wife, who doesn't generally get into true crime stuff very often, has been on the phone, has called the governor, has called the numbers. We've sent emails. So just nothing matters. Nothing matters to these people. So I don't know what else to say about it other than if there's anything that either of the two of you would like to say.
Well, I'm appreciate you creating this space for us to all have the feelings that we're having. I think anybody listening to this knows that this, of course, is going to be a sickening, horrifying moment for everyone who cares about the work that you're doing and who's showing up for truth and justice. So I don't think that anybody who cares about this podcast is going to feel that what this episode is becoming and contains is anything but appropriate.
I am at a loss for words. I don't know that I have anything to say that hasn't been said. It's vile. It's absolutely disgusting. As Bob mentioned, if you want to hear more, it's season 14, episode 34. Bob put together a pretty good podcast that lays out all the details to this case, and I truly am heartbroken.
I'll say this, and I think that this is such a hard episode to put together because we have stuff we have to cover. We have to keep marching on. This is why the work that we do is so important. And that's why I'll be honest with you, I'm conflicted. I don't want to talk about anything else right now. But at the same time, this is why we do what we do. And I don't think that the appropriate response to this is to stop working.
No.
You're right.
No.
So this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a moment of silence for Marcellus Williams. Then we're going to go into an ad break. And then we're going to move on. We're going to start talking about Mario Loza's case and Jody Hill's case, because we have work to do. So we'll take a moment of silence here. And then after the break, we're going to get back to work. All right. Try to reset my brain. Erica, I will have sent you a text message, but when you're editing this, put 30 seconds of silence there before we bring in the music for the ads. Okay. Just need a second to collect myself. Yeah. I keep telling myself that when we start talking about the case that my brain will shift, but right now it's hard for my brain.
It'll shift. It'll shift.
Okay.
And thank you for all the great comments, you guys.
Okay. Here we go. All right, we're back and we're going to move on to the work on our case that we're working on now. This episode, in my opinion, these last two episodes have been very important for me to try to get a better understanding of, first, from last week, what happened to Mario Lowe's. I know there are people out there that disagree with my take on it. I've had discussions with some of them on social media. But for me, trying to look at things critically and neutrally as we start to piece things together, I'm starting to get a better picture of what happened. This week, for me, I got a better picture in my mind of what happened at trial. And again, I want to give another big shout out to Erica. She played a huge part in the research on this and organizing all of this data and putting it all together. So I was able to put the episode together. She's doing, I'm sorry, I have to get this picture off my screen. She's doing fantastic work. And that is, it's a positive thing for me when we're working on, we're having a day like this where something this bad is happening and we're seeing how broken this system is. That is not just us. It's not just our generation, but there's another generation coming up behind us that cares and is doing the work. So, Erica, when you're editing this tomorrow and you're hearing this, just want you to know I'm really proud. Very proud of the work that you're doing. Oh, just wanted you to know that, and you know that I can't say that to your face. I can't compliment you to your face. Makes us both feel awkward. So you can hear it tomorrow while I'm at work. All right.
Thank you, Erica.
Now,
Thank you.
in this episode, we heard, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody on social media about it. Somebody that's pretty convinced that Jody's guilty. And I'm feeling the separation now at this point where things are becoming, to me, incredibly obvious that this was at the very least not a fair trial. I'm 100% convinced by the evidence we have at hand. There's no question in my mind that Jody is innocent. But when you start to see the hoops that people have to start jumping through to try to make things fit into a narrative, I heard things like, we were dealing with a lot of alcohol and people have faulty memories. So we have two main issues that we talked about in this episode. The first one is the air quotes threat that Shaddis Wells supposedly passed on to the Miles family or on the Miles porch. I don't see how anyone can argue that this was not a completely made up lie narrative presented at trial. This was not a case where in the original interviews, they didn't mention that Mario was there. It's kind of like the plastic on the windows with Victoria.
So when you say that, do you mean the threat is made up or the narrative that this group made up?
The narrative the group made up. The threat, we'll talk about that too, because there's some question there. But as far as Mario being present when the threat was made, similar to like Victoria with the plastic on the windows, there are times, and believe me, and I know the people that that are pushing back against me. And I do want to say too, I appreciate the people doing that. It causes us to second guess. It causes us to take a second look at things and look at things from a different perspective. I'm not trying to shit on this person or anybody that I'm having these conversations with. But whether you believe it or not, I'm looking at all these cases as objectively as possible, from every angle as possible. And when I come to a conclusion, it's because of overwhelming evidence. In this case, Andre Williams doesn't just not mention Mario being there. Andre Williams specifically said that he told Mario later. Glenda Miles specifically said that she was given a message and told to pass it on to Mario. Carvale Miles never mentions the incident at all. Shaddis Wells says, and this is not something that a cop wrote, and we have to wonder if that's what he really said. It's his own handwritten statement. He says Leon told him to find, he wrote Cardell, which we assume is Carvale, and asked him to go find Carvale, to go send this message, which he does not term a threat, but that's another discussion. And that when he got there, the person he was looking for wasn't there. So when you have all of that, and then they all come up to trial and get on the stand and say they were sitting there with Mario when this happened, I'm sorry, there's no other explanation for that, in my opinion, other than it's a lie. And it's a coordinated lie. And I think that's what's important. I try to point out in this episode that we need to not get so caught up in the details of this, because the lie is very obvious. But my bigger question is why, and how much can we trust from this group? Because I don't see, and I'm curious what you guys think, that there's any other explanation for that testimony other than they coordinated together to all say that Mario was present there when that threat came.
First of all, it will surprise no one that I agree with you. So I wish I could say I disagreed, because I don't want to be accused of being biased either. None of us like that. We like to actually think that we're doing the work and we're being fact-based. But are the people who feel like this isn't a conspiracy, are they saying, no, you see, they were lying the first time they made statements, and they each had an individual different reason to lie in the way specifically that they lied? There must have been some reason in that moment that they said something different, and that finally, after the hard work of the police, they were able to get the truth. And the reason that everything lines up is that that was the truth, and every person was lying before until they did that work. Is that what people are saying?
I don't
I
know.
genuinely want to know.
I don't know, and I don't want to put, because the one person that I was talking to specifically said, well, don't say that I said things I didn't say.
No, fair enough.
So I don't want to put words in their mouth. What they said was, they kept saying is that, well, we're dealing with alcohol and memory over time. So the implication I got was, well, they just forgot. And I don't know if that means they were wrong the first time. And then it always turns around back to, well, you say that we can't trust what the police wrote in the reports. Why do we trust it this time? I hope I just explained that in this case, we not only have handwritten reports, we have specific details about him not being there. And then we have Shaddis Wells' own words when he says the person he was looking for wasn't there. So it's not as simple as just one little report. And then the person gets on the stand the first time we ever hear from them directly, and they say, that's a lie. That's not what I said. There are instances of that. That does not appear to be the case here. I don't know exactly what they're getting at. They did say the documents are all up on the website now. They said they wanted to read the documents for themselves. And maybe by the time this drops, maybe that.
So here's what I'm thinking though, is this listener, which I don't know the listener. I don't know anything. I don't even know what the conversation was you guys had.
Me neither.
But the idea that, let's say we can't trust these police reports. Let's say that you said it earlier, you can't trust these police reports and we have to go off what they say. Well, then why are the police doing this if they're trying to frame somebody at the beginning? If they're trying to put a narrative together, why are they reporting falsely all these different things if what they're saying is true at court? If what they're saying is true at court, then why are these previous
If that's better for
statements.
are you saying if that's better for the state, why didn't they write that in the report originally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say that you can't trust the reports and that everything they're saying at trial is true. Then why the fuck did the police write that in the first place if they're trying to build a case against somebody?
Right. It seems like first of all, either way, you've got somebody's lying.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think that's why it comes down to, it's just a memory problem. I don't think it's a memory problem. It's too coordinated for there to be a memory problem. It's also like the little details are wrong in court, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Mario's always there. The one consistent thing for me, and that's what I'm doing when I do these statement analysis. I'm looking through like what's consistent in all their stories. The one thing that is consistent is that Mario was there to receive the threat. And to me, so that was the purpose. I have no idea if that was them to get. I don't see a utility in them saying that.
Yeah, I don't understand the end game to it.
Other than where I see a utility in it is from the state's perspective, because of the hearsay rules, and this was not objections either. It's the prosecutor. If you read the testimony, he's the prosecutor says you can't say what they said, but did someone come deliver a message? It's hearsay if you say what they said, but did someone deliver a message to you? And from my understanding, from a bunch of our lawyer listeners that were on after we talked about hearsay a few episodes ago, it seemed to be that's kind of how I got to this point, because I was like reading their explaining how hearsay works, and it's complicated, but it seemed like if they're hearing directly from Shaddis, they should be able to say what Shaddis says. But maybe it's hearsay because Shaddis is saying what someone else says, so it's kind of like double hearsay, something like that. I don't know. But it just jumped out at me as weird that they didn't say it. And then I jumped to the closing arguments, and there it is, where he says, Mario didn't take kindly to being threatened. He's able to give the implication, because Mario received the threat, that Mario had some kind of reaction to it,
and that reaction made it back
to Jody.
that would make it back to Jody, so that very, very quickly after the threat was made, it was like, boom, I got my immediate answer. I have a plan now. I have to plan to kill this person because I heard that they made a face or said something that showed that they weren't feeling threatened enough. And so now I'm gonna have to kill them. That's okay.
Yeah. And then getting back to the, when you look at the documentation, you have Andre Williams' statement. I may be wrong about this, but I believe I remember it's on the website. I believe it was a written statement. Like, he wrote his own statement, if I'm remembering correctly, where he said that, no, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was handwritten, but it might have been the detective writing. I don't remember. But it said when he told Mario about the threat later, again, because Mario wasn't there, that Mario told him that he didn't plan on testifying against anybody.
Right.
And then in another interview with Andre Williams, he said he thought the robbery thing was dead, like it wasn't a deal, which is interesting because Andre then at trial is saying how there was this threat made and he thought somebody was going to get killed. But in his original statements, it seemed like he thought the whole issue was dead. It wasn't a big deal. So if he's the one that was there and heard the threat and he thought everything was fine, how much of a threat was it?
Right. I guess I also don't really understand, and I know that this is all become speculative, so I don't think that you really mention it or go into it in the episode, nor should you have. But this whole idea of like, was there really a chance that there was going to be a trial about the robbery? I mean, I don't even understand. I guess I'm confused about that conversation anyway. I mean, testifying can be one thing, but I just don't get it. I don't know, because it just doesn't seem like there's a ton of great police work going on. So it's hard for me to imagine a member of that community, especially if they had connections to the person, that like actual connections, like Jody had said, that there was this conversation about like, oh no, that I shouldn't have done that, or tell them I'm sorry. Tell them I'm family, whatever, like that there was some sort of conversation around that after the attempted robbery, that suddenly you're the kind of person who's like, you know what, I trust the police to get this right. And I'm going to go ahead and like go to the cops and really have a conversation about who I think did it, and like go on the witness stand. And I don't know, all of that just doesn't really fit with what we know. And the fact that like in the end, the robbery charges were dropped. I find that all kind of puzzling anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's never made sense. I mean, even if there was a threat, so the state's theory is, right, that Leon's arrested, who had said that he was going to take the rap himself.
Yeah.
Leon sends a message that's said as a threat. We'll talk about that in a second. And then a day later just kills him. So it's like the idea of the threat is, hey, don't testify because I don't want to get convicted for robbery. And then before I find out if you're going to, let me arrange a murder. Like what? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. But so the whole motive, and again, Mario had plenty of risk factors aside from this. And then let's not forget that we have witness across the street that saw him out there with 5 or 6 people right before he was killed. Somebody had gone into the house right before he was killed. Like there's other things. He was dealing drugs. There's a lot of things going on that are other risk factors, but they honed in on this. And then and when I looked at it, it seems like they're framing Jody, but really the information that was put together by Caroline Dwyer, which you're going to hear some of that on Sunday. You see, like I think it's just their MO. I think they just don't give a shit. Because when you read, so Andre Williams is interviewed at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And he says in his interview that word on the street is that Joe Hill did it. So like he's already pointing the finger at Jody immediately right then. And I think it could be as simple as, all right, well, we got our suspect. Everybody's saying that this person did it, so let's just go after this person. I don't know. I do want to talk about, before we get too far off topic, the idea of that being a threat. I want to make clear that from my perspective, I don't know if it was a threat. Remember Jody saying, when Jody talked to us a while back, that Leon had tried to get them to go find Mario and let him know they're sorry, he's sorry, and he'll make it up to him when he gets back, or when he gets out. He'll square up with him or whatever. All I was pointing out in the interview that it was interesting that the way Andre phrased it was that the message that was given was that when he gets out, he's going to, I don't remember how he put it, he's gonna square up with him, or he's gonna settle it with him, or something like that. Very well could have been a threat. Could have been an intentional threat from Leon. It could have been miscommunicated by Shaddis. We don't know.
Well, so that's the way I feel about the entire thing. Is I feel like this has been a game of telephone with this threat or perceived threat. Is an entire game of telephone. We don't know what was said. We don't know where to go. But that's exactly, you don't, even if it's relayed properly, if Shaddis relays it as a perceived threat, it's going to be relieved or received differently. I mean, it's just what it is. So it's completely a game of telephone. Maybe Leon did mean it as a threat. Maybe Leon meant it as like, I fucked up, my bad.
Yeah.
But if he just said like, hey, I'll square up with you, and Shaddis doesn't know what that means, and now Shaddis moves it down and makes it more aggressive, like, or vice versa. I mean,
or Shaddis does know what it means, and it's just taken differently, right? And we don't know. And again, I want to point out, I'm not sitting here saying that it obviously wasn't a threat. I'm not saying that. I don't know, but there's a lot of unknowns, and that's kind of the point, right? So, and Shaddis is the most, I think the best version of it we have is Shaddis's own handwritten statement. This same person I was talking to earlier is like, why don't we trust Shaddis? Why do we trust Shaddis? Shaddis is a jailhouse snitch too. Not really. Shaddis didn't go to the police and say, hey, I've got information if you have a deal. Shaddis was out. The police were directed to him by the Miles family. And when they interviewed him, he explained what happened. He's like, yeah, he told me this stuff, told me to deliver this message. And he doesn't write in his own words that it was a threat. It was just a message to be passed. And think, you're talking about a game of telephone. So the plan is Leon tells Shaddis to go find Carvale, so Carvale can pass a message to Mario to tell Mario not to come to court. Now, so let's say in one scenario that it wasn't a threat. That let's just say, for for hypothetical, what Jody said was accurate, right? That all Leon wanted was to not threaten Mario not to testify, but to try to convince him not to testify, and telling him that he'll make it up to him later, that he's sorry, he'll make it up to him later. So he tells Shaddis, go find this Carvale guy. He knows the guy that we robbed. Tell him to let him know. Ask him not to come to court, and tell him that I'll settle up with him when I get out. Shaddis pulls up and says, hey, I'm looking for Carvale. He's not here. Well, this guy Leon in jail wanted me to tell the guy that got robbed that he doesn't want him to testify, and he'll settle up with him when he gets out. And by the way, it seems like that was a quick interaction. If you read Shaddis' testimony, he got his ass beat later by like the Blackwell family regarding all of this. And we never get into the exact details of that. He got beat up for it. But if it's just that quick, right? He pulls up, hey, I'm looking for Carvale. He's not here. Well, I was told to find him, to have him tell the guy that got robbed not to testify, and that the guy, Doughboy in jail, he'll settle up with him later, and he drives away. If it could have been that in this scenario, and then they take it as, what do you mean settle up with him later? Is that is he threatening him? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of different scenarios. Another scenario I'll acknowledge could be that Leon's like, you tell him not to testify, or I'm gonna settle up with him when I get out. To which Andre said took to mean someone was gonna die, someone would be killed.
And it's hard to even speculate, because the community is so afraid of law enforcement, or so skeptical of law enforcement, that it's a street justice community, that they want to take action into their own hands. So I mean, it could go either way. Truthfully, it could go the way that Leon's saying, you better shut up or I'm going to take care of you. Or it could be like my bad, let's straighten this out because we don't want to deal with them anyways.
Or literally tone.
Yeah.
The exact same thing. Shut up and I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
As opposed to shut up or I'll take care of you. It's the same, you know what I mean? And that's all I'm getting at. It could be the same words. All I'm saying is that when I read Shaddis's written statement, he doesn't say that it was a threat. We have Jody, and some people believe Jody, some people don't believe Jody. I haven't found a reason yet not to believe Jody. They've been honest with me, even about the robbery and everything else. They said that when Leon called, they said just to tell him, don't testify, I'll make it up to you, basically. So that's the other piece of it. The third piece of it, and then we'll get into the few questions that we have, is where Mario was at the night of the murder. That one it's a little more ambiguous, but it is certainly a big difference in the story. So we have originally James Blackwell says he's hanging out with Mario at his apartment on Broadway. Glenda says Carvale's sleeping at home all day. Glenda doesn't say anything about partying anywhere or doing anything like that. Andre says he's hanging out alone with Mario. And then all of a sudden at trial, there was a big party over at Glenda's. And it's like you said it earlier, that the Miles family's all over this case. Big party at Glenda's. Everybody's hanging out with Mark. James Blackwell, he moves over to the Miles family. Now he's hanging out with them over there. Andre changes the spot where he was talking to Mario, but he's still alone. But either way, Mario's still there. And then the whole time we have Canvas Smith. Canvas, as far as being with Mario, seems to me, and this is just me trying to cross-reference everything, seems to me to be the most credible as far as what she was doing with Mario. Her story, as far as what she was doing with Mario, remained the same. Picked her up, they drove around, went drinking. The big change there was the situation with Andre Williams. He originally tells police they dropped Andre off at the crime scene, dropped her off, and then he left. And then Mario left. At trial, it became, we were at the crime scene looking for Andre, didn't find him. Then he dropped me off and said he was going to look for Andre. While Andre saying he was hanging out with Mario all night already.
Yeah.
There's corroboration with Canvas's story because you have Connie and Dora who say that they saw Mario with Canvas that night. Connie goes into detail where they saw Connie with Canvas, or saw Mario with Canvas at the crime scene. Now, some people, one theory I've seen tossed around is, what if they're all true? What if there was a party and Mario was hanging out at this party with all the Miles family,
Mm-hmm.
and because Mario was drunk, blood alcohol level was high. They then go with Glenda's, which actually made me think, because I couldn't figure out, like, why does Glenda push the time back? Everybody has said from the very beginning, the only person that said he's with him was James Blackwell, that he's with Mario till about 11 o'clock, and at 11:45 he hears the shots. Andre says he's with Mario between 10 and 11, same spot. Then he leaves. At trial now, Carvale is saying he's there too. Everybody's in that now. It's become a party, but they still say 11 o'clock, and then Glenda says no, it's 9:30. Well, one thing that does leave room for, which I didn't catch, is if they were all partying with Mario, and this is the theory that they're throwing around, they're all partying with Mario until 9:30, because Canvas Smith says that she met up with Mario about between 9:30 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
So like both things could be true. But and this is why I like that kind of push up and push back and discussion. So I thought, okay, maybe that's true. Maybe they, even though none of them said they were with Mario that night, seems like a pretty significant thing to tell the police when your friend was just murdered, and then hours later they're asking you about it, and you don't mention I was just with him. But okay, is it possible? But because that question came up, I went back to cross-reference, and what do I find? Connie Lucas says she saw Mario with Canvas at the crime scene, but when you read her testimony, she came out, they were at the crime scene, and then her and Dora both say after that, after she saw them at the crime scene, Mario with Canvas in the car, which Canvas described the exact same interaction. Seems because she's not friends with them. She said right in her test she didn't like them. So she's not part of the Miles family that's making up this story. But those stories are exactly the same. She says she's there. Mario goes inside, comes down with Connie and Dora. They leave. Connie says Mario was there. They came out. He's there with Canvas Smith. That connects. But they said they saw him with Canvas before they then went up to Glenda's and were partying. So the party wasn't over when that happened. Does that make sense? Like the timeline of those events? Like when they saw Mario with Canvas, that was before they went up to the big party, and they were partying with all the same people. It was with Glenda and Carvale and all these people that were all up at the party. So the two can't be both be true, because he was already with Canvas.
Well, I think a big thing for me in this situation is it's like, what defines a party? And the reason I say that is being local and very understanding of that community, going through that community, being around that community. I think we're defining a party a little differently than they might be defining a party. The individuals included in this, because any given night there are groups of people hanging out. And
to be clear, they didn't call it a party,
right?
They said they're all hanging out drinking across the street.
But you can actually Google this in our local newspapers. They've been discussing like recently problems with these block parties, is what they're calling them. It's groups of individuals hanging out. Right? So it's hard to define what that means, and it's hard to define, like, are we all hanging out, or is there a couple people hanging out? Who's hanging out? How long are they hanging out? So that's why, I mean, when you start hearing these stories and there's like that, whoever that listener was that kind of said maybe they're all kind of overlap, that truthfully reads true to me, because I know this community, I know how it works. Like, there is a lot of this hanging out, and there's a lot of violence that happens. I mean, most of the times when you see any violent crime that happens in this community, it's at one of these hangout, when these individuals are hanging out.
Yeah. To me, what I see is the utility. There's utility in putting Mario there. So there's all these people suspect Carvale of being involved in this, and so now they go to trial. None of them having said they saw. Like, I don't doubt that they were all over there drinking that night. I just don't think Mario was ever there. We have him talking to his best friend a few hours before that, saying he thought Carvale was the one that robbed him. And Canvas is spending the whole evening driving around with him. The timing of it, if he picks Canvas up at 9:30, And what this listener was suggesting was, well, Mari was probably hanging out there partying with all of them until 9:30 when the party broke up, then went and found Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
But the kink in that is that Dora and Connie said they saw him with Canvas before they went to whatever we're calling the party, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we're up there. And the bigger point is like nobody, like none of these people said Mari was there to begin with. And the even bigger picture is the story, even Andre Williams, who says that he was hanging out with Mario that whole night alone, his story is changing too. And that to me is there's an indication that it never was true to begin with. Because like the bones of his story are there, right? That he's hanging out drinking alone with Mario. One time he's on a porch, one time he's in a car, but the bones of the story are the same, but the details are wrong about where they're, and they're details about like not like what time was it, but where you were sitting, what you were doing with him that night. And to me, that's a big indication it's wrong. And then you tie into that according to Canvas, that what they were doing was looking for Andre all night. Or depending on when, somebody had said earlier, depends who you ask if Andre was at the crime scene that night. It doesn't depend on who you ask. It depends on when you ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like none of these stories fit together. And that's why I laid out the Shaddis Wells thing first. It's not that I think it's that significant whether Mari was there to receive the so-called threat or not. It's the fact that what we learned from that incident is that group is willing to get together and come up with a story and testify under oath to a false narrative. So we already know from that. I'm saying we know. I know there's people that disagree because bad memory, whatever excuse you're giving them. But that story's a bullshit lie. It's much easier. That one was much more cut and dry, in my opinion, than where Mari was at that night, because everything is so, because even Canvas's story changes on top of it as far as what she was doing with Andre Williams. So that's a long breakdown. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add, Janet, before we get into the couple of questions we have.
No, I mean, I guess I was just, I guess the question that I think I brought up last week too, even before we had this episode, is, do you have an opinion or a sense, knowing that it's, you know, you don't know, of course, but do you have an opinion or a sense that it is that group, like insular group, that made that decision, or that there could have also been some strong influence from the police and, you know, from a certain someone leaning in and saying, you know, what might make sense is if
I don't have any way of knowing the answer. A lot of times,
Right,
like
of
we
course.
try to, and there's people in the chat that are saying the origin of lie. Like we always want to try to source the lie. Where's the misinformation come from? And that's easy sometimes when there's like a thing that we know the police thought that they later got wrong, and that
Right.
thing, but we don't have that in this case. To me, it seems like the idea of Mario being present for the threat, if, and it's a big if, there was like influence on them to create that narrative, I would think that it would have come from the prosecutor, because that doesn't really help. That didn't really help the investigation, but it did help the prosecutor. Like there was utility in it for the state in their closing arguments to paint the picture they were trying to paint at trial. I'm not saying that happened, but that I
Right.
think if there's influence there, the party thing and everybody like being buddy, to me, the utility I see from that is, why would I kill Mario? We were all buddies. We were hanging out that night. We were all
Mhm.
hanging out, drinking, having a good time. Why would I kill him? That's what I got. And the people that were kind of pushing back against it were like, why would they all lie to put themselves with the victim right before they were killed? Well, they didn't say, yeah, I was drinking with Mario at the crime scene 5 minutes before he got murdered. They said I was drinking with Mario an hour before he got murdered at a totally different location. And then I went to bed, slept on the couch, and then he left. Right. So they put themselves with him in a happy way where we're all buddies 4 blocks away from where all of this happened. So, but I don't know. I don't know. It's this. And that's again why I ended the episode with the question, why? Because I don't know the why. I see the problem. I see what they did. I don't know why they did it.
Right.
In either case, really. Like I said, I can speculate and hypothesize that the Shaddis Wells bit was to help the prosecution paint this story of Jody killed Mario because of the robbery and there was this threat going on. The other one, I don't know. Like, the only utility I see is to try to sanitize themselves. But again, once they're at trial, they're not the ones on trial. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, I totally know that, and I'm not asking you to, be definitive about it. But I do think it's interesting, and that's what kind of we're all saying is like whether or not we can source the origin of the lie. That's a piece of analysis that comes into play, and you discover that sometimes you can't figure that out with the information that you have.
Right.
But if you're a police officer or a detective or a prosecutor, understand the detective is often a police officer. Bear with me. Were to say to certain people, I've also heard rumors that Carvale could have been involved. Do you guys have anything to say about that? Like, would that have been possible? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
to sort of sanitize them for the efforts of the case, like you were saying about the prosecution. Like, you
Yeah.
don't want dangling threads that the defense could point to and say, well, what about this person? So if you're buttoning it all up, it serves the people that we're talking about, and it serves law enforcement and, the court system, if those things have just kind of been rubbed away and they don't exist anymore.
Right. Hope in the chat too points out that they're talking about Dewan's statement about seeing somebody walk into the building shortly
Mm-hmm.
before the murder. How that kind of lines up with one of the stories that we were told this week, and that was, I don't get, Candace says that the first time she says Andre was dropped off there at the crime scene. That could have been Andre there going in and out. Um, and the second time, I don't know, because they said that Mario left to find Andre. But yeah, that's another big one. And also, you know, Dora and Connie say that they were there at the apartment, at the house, and saw Mario before that. Another interesting thing, the Victoria never mentions them being there at all either. Like, there's just so many, like, these stories shouldn't, if these are just completely unconnected, just witnesses to this, like, why are their stories all changing? Why is nothing making sense? Nothing is lining up. It's concerning.
Yeah, agreed. Well, in terms of additional questions, um, I'll read Shelley. Shelley says, not a question, but an observation. The state's theory was that Jody committed this murder to prevent Demario from implicating them in the robbery, but we're supposed to then believe that Jody wouldn't threaten anyone who was testifying and implicating them in the murder. We already know they could get communication out via the kites. It just doesn't make sense.
That, I hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good point. So if I'm following the train of logic there, so the whole idea, right, is we're threatening, Mario's killed to stop Mario from testifying in the robbery. Now Jody's sitting in jail on trial for murder, and there's this witness, Sonia Lucas, that's out there, Victoria Miles, these witnesses that are going to be testifying against Jody. Jody's sending letters out, sending this information, and no threats. You'd think that if they're willing to, like the listener said there, if they're willing to make threats for a robbery and kill for over a robbery charge, don't you think maybe they might have done the same thing for a murder? But that's not what we see. Instead, we just get letters and kites and things trying to get the police to look at Carvale.
Yeah. Nancy says, what was the racial makeup of the jury? The county is currently 78% white and 13% black.
I don't know. And there's been a few questions about the jury. I need to go through the voir dire, and maybe that'll be an episode coming up, because there's questions too about, the Jody's former foster mother was
Yes.
impaneled on the jury.
Yeah.
And I have the voir dire transcripts. I just haven't had a minute or haven't taken the time to read through those yet to see. But I'll check that out.
Great. And then
I
Jack.
should,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah,
I
no.
should point out, we'll make this a little cleaner for Erica, but I will point out that I have been put into contact with one of the jurors that served on the jury, and I haven't spoken to them directly yet, but I'm hoping to interview with them to find out like what was going on in the jury box, and they may have some insight into what the makeup of the jury and what those discussions were like. So I'm hoping that we'll get an on the record interview from them coming up.
Oh, that'd be great. There's also just some general, and I saw it in the chat here live, as well as just some confusion around similar names and conflicting timelines, and just folks asking. I know there's a million documents and a lot being worked on at any given time, but Jacques even said that she could they could help make some series of documents where you sort of have a guide to who people are and how everything fits together. Leslie compared it to the Game of Thrones, which is, I don't mean it. I don't think anyone is trying to take it lightly, but when you realize like you're having trouble keeping track of something, of course you're going to make a comparison in your head to another time when that's happened to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think somebody did put something on the official fan page. Somebody just put out, you know what? Today, I haven't looked through it yet, but somebody emailed me, a listener emailed me that they put together like an Excel spreadsheet of a lot of this stuff. So we'll try to get that stuff published. I just need to look at it yet. I also point out, and you guys will hear more about this on Sunday. I've been sick as a dog for 4 days on and off. Every time I think I'm better, I'm back at it again. So my brain's still not quite fully functioning, which is why you're kind of a 25-minute episode on Sunday. You're welcome for that. So I haven't I'm kind of behind trying to catch up when I'm able to not be laying in bed.
Yeah. Well, Kathy voiced what many people have been voicing and what, I think has been talked about on the podcast and the follow-ups as well, which is just who is someone being protected in this scenario? If so, who? If so, why? And then Eris said, does Jody have a theory as to why they were set up? And I'll let you speak to this as well, but I would direct you back a couple of episodes ago, actually probably 3 or 4 episodes ago. There was more information about Jody's relationship to Guinness and, some.
Yeah,
some
Jody believes that McGinnis set them up because of previous interactions they had, and they had some they've known each other. McGinnis was a mentor to Jody through like the Masonic Lodge, and we see McGinnis as a reference for Jody on job applications. Apparently there was a falling out, and Jody thinks that was part of the reason. But really, and was that the last question, Janet?
Yeah.
Good. Because that ties in nicely to what we got coming up on Sunday. So Sunday's episode that you're going to hear is, again, it's very short. I was like on my deathbed and had no voice when I was trying to get it recorded and put together. Thankfully, so listener Caroline Dwyer has been doing a ton of research about other cases and corruption within the Benton Harbor Police Department. And she's given us, she put together like a Google slide presentation on it and another PowerPoint presentation on all of it. Erica took that and then put a lot of work into like trying to organize it down into an outline that I could put it together in an episode. When I sat down to start writing it, I couldn't even see straight. So I picked a handful of things to discuss and then called it a day before I lost my voice, and put Caroline has graciously agreed to let us go ahead and publish her research into that so that everybody can read it. So to give you an example, I mean, I talked about on the corruption side of it. And so these are things like, cops getting arrested for DUI. At one point, there's a cop that ran a person. They got a call for a person laying in the street. They ran the person over and drugged them to their death, and they were fined $209 for that. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. I think I talked for 15 minutes about some of them. The slide presentation just on those news stories about corruption within the Benton Harbor Police Department and the city officials is 119 slides long, and there's probably 4 items on every slide. It's insane. And then there's another one that is on other cases similar to Jody. So I hit on, I think, just 3 of them. I think when I wrote it out, I had 5 of them, and I literally, you'll hear this is the worst episode you're ever going to hear. I was in the 3rd one and my voice started going, and I just said, my voice is going, I'm done. That's it.
Understood.
But there's a couple that like extremely similar, and like Caroline's been saying in the chat here today that they kind of operate the same way in all of their cases, like case after case after case after case. There's no evidence, and then here comes a witness that usually also has some charges on them, and the witness comes forward. In some cases they recant, in other cases it's disproven. Sometimes they're acquitted, sometimes they're convicted, and like it's just par for the course. And her, like, I started in like 95. I don't remember how far back Caroline began with it, but she's only gotten to like 2006 so far, and they're still just stacking up and stacking up and stacking up. So I think that probably has more to do with it than McGinnis targeting Jody. I think it was like the easy way out. Everybody at the crime scene that night said, "Oh, it was Jody," and so they went, "Okay." And then on top of that, McGinnis, according to Jody, had some beef with Jody already, until they just went at it. And it seems like in these cases, once they lock in, did they think they know who did it? That's it. Because think about what happened with Jody's case. According to LaShawn Harper, who owns the Dialo's Cafe where Jody was working, hours after the murder, the police go to the restaurant, say they're looking for Jody, and they say, because there was a murder, and LaShawn is like, well, when was it? He doesn't remember the times now, but what he remembers is they told him the time of the murder, and he's like, oh, well, there's no way that Jody could have done that. They were here. So the first person they talked to about Jody's whereabouts, they got the information they needed. Jody was at work during the time of the murder. And yet they still continue to pursue this and jump through all these hoops that we've gone through since then.
I think once you build a culture, it's really easy to just fall in line with that culture.
Well, yeah. And I would go ahead.
And part of that culture is nobody gave a shit. How many podcasts have you, all these cases, how many podcasts or documentaries or anything you heard about the community in Benton Harbor? None. So like they could continue to keep doing this same thing and have that same culture, the culture that was spoken about by Andrew Collins when he interviewed with me, who was a Benton Harbor cop in 2003. Nobody cared. There was nobody. Most of the people that they're sending to prison for these crimes didn't have money. They didn't have resources. There's nobody fighting for them. And so there was no pushback until now.
So I was just going to add, and maybe we'll have more to talk about next week once we've heard the episode and we have wonderful, wonderful Caroline's, all her hard work. But I'm very curious how many cases went to trial and how many cases pled out, because it is unusual to go to trial. So if you think if many of the cases that are being highlighted are ones that people know about because there was actually a public record or a public hearing of some kind around all of this activity, it makes me wonder how many people feel helpless and just plead out, and we never hear about any of those. And that's usually the majority in the criminal justice system is pleading out.
Yeah, and the fact that there are so many of these that did go to trial is crazy. I mean, most like you said, most people don't. But I know Janet's got a heart out. I'm still not feeling the best. We've been going for an hour, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. So yeah, make sure you tune in on Sunday for me to talk very briefly about a handful of things, and then be looking for Caroline's documents that highlight a whole. If you're looking, I mean, pack a lunch, sit down, and read through all of the corruption that has gone on in this community over the years, from the police department through the city council, the mayors, all of it goes on and on and on. Check that out on Sunday, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Let's stop on our audio.
Bobby, I didn't know you had been sick until you said it on the air. Well,
it's been the weirdest
so
thing.
Sorry.
Becky has been deathly ill. But Becky missed 2 days of work last week. I think Friday she had 102 fever. It's been like headache, fever, achy, extreme fatigue, like everything that feels like COVID did. But we both tested for COVID a million times. Like every single COVID test we have all says we're negative.
Yeah.
And then
sounds like the flu, kind of. I was gonna say, wait, what? Why are you there, Zach?
Well, I was like I said, it goes in.
I didn't know he was.
It goes in waves. I kind of felt like I was better today, and I don't know if it's just the emotions coming out or what earlier, but like my head started throbbing again, like right about the time we started recording. Because I was gonna tell you to stay home, but then I was like, I'm feeling better. I think I've kicked it, because it's been going on since last Wednesday that I've been dealing with this.
Okay, note to self. Let someone give you the choice next time.
Yeah.
Maybe present both options.
Thought it was better.
Decide.
So
look, we're 6 feet apart. It's fine. Isn't that what they said?
Yeah, 6 feet's fine. Yeah, Friday I was going to take the day. I wasn't gonna go to school. Becky stayed home Friday. I woke up feeling terrible. and got an email from the secretary that said, just by the way, in case anybody was thinking about it, we already have all of the subs used up and 3 teachers out without subs. And I was like, so like I literally went to like my investigative journalism class. Remember we had talked about on the air, we talked about Trial and Error, that show,
Yeah.
John Lithgow,
Yeah.
but comedy show about investigations.
Mm-hmm.
For my investigative journalism class, I'm like, listen, my head hurts. I don't want to be close to you. I don't want to talk to you, and I don't want you to talk to me. So we're watching a show about investigations. And then I put that on, and they all sat on that side of the room and watched the show.
Great.
And
Perfect.
I sat at my desk with my head. My principal came in at one point. He's like, you're all right. I'm like, not really.
Yeah.
I'd stay away.
Yeah.
But then Saturday came, and I woke up and felt like $1 million. Thought it was over with. I went to the gym, came back, was doing yard work. Actually, Mike came and visited.
Oh,
Mikey was coming to visit
Texting his ass right now.
He
Ask him if he's
came to visit his family, and came over here and had dinner with me and Becky. And then Mike and I went and played some cards and just had a nice night with Mike that night. Felt great. Woke up Sunday dead, just dead again all day Sunday. And then yesterday was feeling better in the morning. In the evening felt like crap this morning, but then was feeling pretty good all day. And then now like my head's throbbing. It just will not.
It just said, what the hell? You were in town?
Next weekend, I'm finally going to open the cabin.
I've got to be in Indianapolis for a soccer tournament.
Oh, I'm going the other way because the last time I was at my cabin was last November and I don't even know if it's still standing. And I'm installing my you didn't notice my internet's super fast. My fiber internet got hooked up last week also. Yep. Took the Starlink down, put it into roam mode where I can connect to the cabin, and in roam mode you can just turn it on for the month you want to use it and then shut it back off.
Okay.
I'm gonna set that up. Got to fix the hot water heater
in the boonies.
Yes, sir.
Maybe.
Oh, and I guess I'll give you guys a quick update. Was not able to lasso the raccoons. The patrons got to see the little video that I had my class put together first hour that day.
Great video.
Content creation. I had them put together a time lapse of the raccoons destroying my yard that night. The next night, Wednesday night, I did go chasing after one with the lasso. I had 2 live traps set up in the yard. Caught the cat again. Got the cat out of the live trap.
Oh God.
And had the cellular camera notifying me. And when it went off, I ran outside with the lasso, chased one across the yard, threw the rope at it, missed. Not my fault. It was running.
Please tell me you're in your underwear too.
Of course I was.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, but that seemed to do it. That scared them enough that they have not been back. And then we've had a monsoon for the last couple days. So so now I think they've moved on. I have not had any raccoon damage since Wednesday night.
Okay, that's great.
All right, Janet's got a heart out. Bob's got a heart on.
Yeah.
And I got.
I'm sure we'll all have a roller coaster of emotions. It feels nice to feel normal for a second and be in this community and laugh and talk about things we care about and are passionate about. And that is like strength. That is giving us strength. It's giving us all strength to continue fighting the fight, even on a really terrible day like today.
This is what I love about our community is we went, especially the patrons that have been there from the pregame on, that we were able to go work through all. It almost feels like when you go to a funeral, you know how, like sadness, and then you get together and kind of are able to kind of turn things around. It'll come back in waves again. But we would just appreciate all of you guys for being here with us.
Yeah.
And with that, Janet, go do your improv.
Oh, okay. Because that's what everyone feels like doing, but that's fine.
I'm going to go lay down. I'm going to take some Advil.
Yeah.
I'm going to lay down.
Feel better. Zach, don't get this.
Yeah.
But also, it's not your fault if you get it. It's 100% Bob's fault.
I was wondering why he kissed me on the lips when I walked in.
But I don't think we should. Hear me out. I don't think we should kiss goodbye today.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
What a mature decision.
Yeah.
I'm proud.
Okay. Right. Bye, everybody. We love you guys. Love you, JB.
Love you guys.
Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.